Zara Keth Knoll stood before the High Council with her head held high. The massive chamber around her was made of white crystal that seemed to glow from within. 12 tall figures in silver robes sat on floating thrones above her. Their pale blue eyes looked down at her with cold anger. "You have brought shame to your family name," spoke Council Leader Vexmore. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "You dare question our decisions about the primitive world called Earth?" Zara's purple skin grew darker as her emotions rose. She was young by Valdrian standards, only 200 years old, but she had always been different from her people. Where others saw weakness, she saw strength. Where others saw enemies, she saw potential friends. "I only asked why we must destroy them," Zara said. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. "The humans show signs of intelligence. They create art and music. They care for their sick and weak. Why can we not learn from them instead of conquering them?" The council members whispered among themselves in the old language. Zara could hear their disgust. In Valdrian society, questioning the council was bad enough. But defending an inferior race was the worst crime possible. Council Leader Vexmore raised his hand for silence. "The humans are nothing but animals that learn to use tools. They fight among themselves constantly. They destroy their own planet. They are weak and emotional. They have no place in our great empire except as slaves." "But that is not true," Zara said, taking a step forward. "I have studied their transmissions. I have watched their behavior from our observation posts. Yes, they fight sometimes, but they also help each other. When disasters happen, they work together. When one of them is hurt, others risk their lives to save them. They may not have our technology, but they have something we have lost." "And what is that?" Vexmore asked with a mocking tone. "They have heart," Zara said simply. The silence that followed was heavy and dangerous. Several council members stood up from their floating thrones. Their faces showed pure rage. In Valdrian culture, emotions were seen as a weakness to be controlled. To suggest that another race was better than them in any way was unthinkable. "You have gone too far," Vexmore said. His voice was now quiet but deadly. "You speak of heart as if it were a good thing. You defend creatures that are beneath us. You question the wisdom of your betters. There is only one punishment for such crimes." Zara felt her blood turn cold. She knew what was coming, but she did not regret her words. Someone had to speak for the humans, even if it cost her everything. "Zara Keth Knoll," Vexmore continued, "you are hereby stripped of your rank, your family name, and your place in Valdrian society. Your bio-enhancements will be removed. You will be exiled to the very world you claim to love so much. Let us see how long you survive among your precious humans without our technology to protect you." 2 guards in black armor stepped forward. Zara did not resist as they placed metal bands around her wrists. The bands began to glow, and she felt a burning pain as her enhanced strength and speed were drained away. Her improved vision became blurry. Her ability to breathe different atmospheres disappeared. In minutes, she was reduced to her basic biological form. "Take her to the transport," Vexmore ordered. "Set course for the 3rd planet. Drop her in one of their wilderness areas during their winter season. If she truly believes humans are so wonderful, let them prove it by helping her survive." As the guards led her away, Zara heard the council members laughing. They thought they were giving her a death sentence. The humans, they believed, were too selfish and primitive to help a stranger, especially one who looked so different from them. The journey to Earth took 3 days. Zara was kept in a small cell with only basic food and water. She spent the time thinking about what she had done. Many would call her foolish for throwing away her comfortable life for a race she had never even met in person. But she could not forget the images she had seen of humans helping each other during floods and earthquakes, of human parents sacrificing everything for their children, of human doctors working without rest to save lives. On the 3rd day, the guards came for her. They gave her a simple gray suit designed to protect her from Earth's atmosphere and a small pack with basic survival supplies. Nothing more. "The Council is being generous," one guard said with a cruel smile. "They could have dropped you naked in space." The transport ship entered Earth's atmosphere over a vast wilderness covered in white snow. Mountains rose like frozen giants from the ground. Forests of tall green trees stretched as far as the eye could see. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that Valdrian worlds never were. "Prepare for drop," the pilot announced. Zara was pushed toward an opening in the ship's floor. Below her, the snowy landscape rushed past at incredible speed. Fear gripped her heart, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had made her choice. Now she would face the consequences. "Any last words?" the guard asked mockingly. Zara looked at him with steady eyes. "Yes. When the humans prove me right, remember this moment." Then she jumped. The fall seemed to last forever. The emergency system in her suit slowed her descent, but not enough to prevent injury. She crashed through the branches of tall pine trees and hit the snowy ground hard. Pain shot through her left leg and arm. Blood ran down her face from cuts made by the branches. She lay in the snow for several minutes, fighting to stay conscious. The cold was worse than anything she had ever experienced. Her breath came out in white clouds that quickly froze in the air. Her fingers and toes began to go numb despite her protective suit. Slowly, painfully, she got to her feet. Her left leg could barely support her weight, but she had to move or freeze to death. She looked around at the endless forest of snow-covered trees. There was no sign of human civilization anywhere. The irony was not lost on her. She had defended humanity to the Council, and now her survival depended on whether she could find them, before the cold killed her. If the Council was right about humans being selfish and cruel, she would die alone in this frozen wilderness. If she was right about their compassion, maybe there was hope. Zara chose a direction and began to walk through the deep snow. Each step was agony, but she kept moving. Behind her, she left a trail of purple blood drops in the white snow. Above her, the gray sky promised more snow to come. She had perhaps hours before hypothermia would make the choice for her. Somewhere in this vast wilderness, she hoped to find the humans she had risked everything to defend. Her life now depended on the kindness of strangers from a species her own people considered worthless. The wind howled through the trees as if mocking her faith in humanity. But Zara kept walking, driven by a belief that somewhere in this frozen world she would find proof that compassion was not a weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Jake Morrison stepped out of his log cabin into the crisp morning air. The snow crunched under his heavy boots as he began his daily walk around his property. He had been living alone in the Montana wilderness for 3 years now, ever since he left the army. The quiet life suited him better than the chaos of military bases and war zones. He pulled his thick jacket tighter around his body and started down the familiar trail. As a former medic, Jake had seen enough pain and death to last several lifetimes. Out here in the forest, Surrounded by tall pine trees and clean mountain air, he found the peace his mind desperately needed. The morning sun cast long shadows across the snow-covered ground. Jake had walked this same path hundreds of times, so when he saw something unusual near the old fallen log, he stopped immediately. There in the snow was a trail of dark drops leading toward his cabin. The drops were purple, not red like blood should be. Jake followed the strange trail with growing concern. Whatever had made these drops was hurt and heading toward his home. He moved faster, his military training taking over. About 50 yards from his cabin, he found the source. A woman lay face down in the snow, completely still. But this was no ordinary woman. Her skin had a light purple tint, and she was much taller than any human Jake had ever seen. Her hair was white like fresh snow, but it did not look old. She wore a gray suit that seemed too thin for the freezing weather. Jake knelt beside her and carefully turned her over. Her face was beautiful, but clearly not human. Her features were too perfect, too symmetrical. Her ears came to slight points, and her closed eyes were larger than normal. But despite her strange appearance, she was obviously dying from the cold. His medical training kicked in immediately. Jake checked her pulse and found it weak, but steady. Her breathing was shallow and her lips were turning blue. Hypothermia was setting in fast. He had maybe an hour to warm her up before the cold killed her. Without hesitation, Jake lifted the unconscious woman in his arms. She was surprisingly light despite her height. He carried her quickly back to his cabin, kicking open the door and heading straight for the fireplace. He laid her on the thick rug in front of the fire and began working to save her life. First, he built up the fire until it roared with heat. Then he carefully removed her wet outer suit, leaving her undergarments for modesty. He wrapped her in warm blankets from his bed and began the slow process of warming her core temperature. He had done this before for soldiers caught in blizzards, but never for someone who was clearly not from Earth. For the next several hours, Jake worked without rest. He monitored her pulse and breathing. He gave her small sips of warm broth when she was semi-conscious. He treated the cuts on her face and the obvious injury to her left leg. Through it all, he tried not to think too hard about what she might be or where she came from. As the sun began to set, the woman's eyes finally opened. They were the most unusual color Jake had ever seen, like purple gemstones with flecks of silver. She looked around the cabin with confusion and fear, then focused on Jake's face. She tried to sit up quickly but gasped in pain from her injured leg. Jake gently pushed her back down onto the pillows he had arranged for her. "Easy there," he said in a calm voice. "You're safe now. You were nearly frozen to death when I found you." The woman stared at him with wide eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but only strange sounds came out. Her language was musical but completely foreign to Jake. After a few tries, she seemed to realize he could not understand her. She pointed to herself and said slowly, "Zara." Jake smiled and pointed to his own chest. "Jake." She repeated his name, carefully, her accent making it sound exotic. "Jake." Then she looked around the cabin again, taking in the simple furniture, the stone fireplace, and the warm blankets covering her. Her expression showed complete surprise, as if kindness was the last thing she had expected to find. Jake went to the kitchen and returned with a bowl of hot soup and some bread. He offered it to Zara, who hesitated before accepting it. She sniffed the food carefully, then took a small taste. Her eyes widened with pleasure, and she began eating hungrily. While she ate, Jake studied her more carefully. Her injuries were healing faster than should be possible. The cuts on her face were already closing. Her broken ribs seemed to be mending themselves. Whatever she was, her body was far more advanced than a human's. After she finished eating, Zara tried to communicate with him again. She pointed to the window, then made a gesture like something falling from the sky. She pointed to herself, then made a pushing motion, as if she had been forced to come here. Finally, she looked directly into Jake's eyes and spoke one word in English. Banished. Jake's eyebrows rose. She knew at least some English, which meant she had studied human languages. The implications were staggering. If she had been banished here, that meant there were others of her kind somewhere out there. And if they had the technology to travel between worlds, Earth might be in more danger than anyone realized. But those were worries for later. Right now, he had an injured woman in his cabin who needed help, regardless of what species she belonged. Jake had taken an oath as a medic to help anyone who was hurt. That oath did not specify that the patient had to be human. Over the next few days, Jake took care of Zara while she recovered from her injuries. He learned that she could understand English much better than she could speak it. She had studied human transmissions, she explained in broken sentences, but had never actually talked to a human before. Slowly, her story came out. She had been part of something called the High Council among her people, the Valdrians. She had questioned their plans for Earth and been punished by exile. Her own people had dropped her in the wilderness during winter, expecting her to die. "They think you cruel," Zara said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Think you selfish. Think you leave stranger to die?" Jake poked at the burning logs with an iron rod. "Well, they were wrong about that." Zara studied his face in the firelight. "Why you help me? I am not your kind." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Where I come from, we have a saying. We judge people by their actions, not their appearance. You were hurt and needed help. That's all that mattered." Tears formed in Zara's unusual eyes. In all her years among the Valdrians, no one had ever shown her such simple kindness without expecting something in return. Her people were advanced in technology but seemed to have forgotten how to care for each other. "My people coming," she said quietly. "They want to conquer Earth, make humans slaves." Jake set down the iron rod and looked at her seriously. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 2 of your years, maybe less." Jake nodded slowly. He had suspected something like this when he found her. An alien woman falling from the sky was not a coincidence. It was a sign that Earth's quiet days were numbered. "Can they be stopped?" he asked. Zara was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I do not know. They have great ships, powerful weapons. They have conquered many worlds. But you stood up to them," Jake pointed out. "That took courage." Zara shook her head. "That was foolish. I lost everything." "Did you?" Jake asked. "Or did you find something better?" She looked around the simple cabin, at the warm fire, at the man who had saved her life without asking for anything in return. For the first time since her exile began, Zara smiled. Maybe her punishment was really a gift. Maybe she had been sent to learn what her people had forgotten about the value of compassion. Outside the cabin, snow continued to fall on the quiet forest. But inside, by the warm fire, 2 beings from different worlds began to understand that the greatest strength was not in weapons or technology. It was in the willingness to help a stranger even when that stranger looked nothing like yourself. Jake offered Zara a place to stay for as long as she needed. She accepted gratefully, knowing that she had found something among humans that did not exist among her own people. She had found kindness without conditions, help without payment, and acceptance without judgment. The Council had sent her to Earth to die. Instead, she was learning how to truly live. Spring came slowly to the Montana mountains. The snow began to melt, revealing green grass and wildflowers underneath. Zara had been living with Jake for 3 months now, and her English had improved greatly. More importantly, she was beginning to understand what made humans so different from her own people. Jake had decided it was time to introduce Zara to his friends in the nearby town of Pine Ridge. He was careful to choose people he trusted completely. The first person he brought to meet her was Lisa Chen, the local veterinarian. Lisa arrived at Jake's cabin on a sunny morning in April. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. Jake had told her only that he had a friend who needed medical attention and was very shy around strangers. When Zara walked out of the cabin, Lisa's mouth fell open. She stared at Zara's purple-tinted skin and unusual height for several seconds. Then, being a practical person, she simply extended her hand and smiled. "You must be Zara," Lisa said. "Jake told me you were unique." "I'm Lisa." Zara shook her hand, carefully, still amazed by human friendliness. "It is good to meet you, Lisa." Over the next few hours, Lisa examined Zara's injuries and was amazed by how quickly they had healed. She asked questions about Zara's biology without being rude or invasive. When Zara explained that she was not from Earth, Lisa simply nodded, as if aliens visited her clinic every day. "That explains the accelerated healing," Lisa said matter-of-factly. "Your cellular structure must be more advanced than ours." What impressed Zara most was what happened next. A local farmer called Lisa's emergency line. His horse had been injured in an accident and needed immediate surgery. Lisa had planned to spend the day with Jake and Zara, but she immediately grabbed her medical bag. "I'm sorry, but I have to go," Lisa said. "Buster has been with the Morrison family for 15 years. I can't let him suffer." Zara watched as Lisa drove away to help an animal that belonged to someone else, even though it meant giving up her free time. In Valdrian society, no one worked without payment or personal benefit. The idea of helping others simply because it was right was foreign to her people. A few days later, Jake introduced Zara to Carlos Rivera, the local sheriff. Carlos was a large man with a serious face, but his eyes were warm and honest. Jake had told him that Zara was a refugee from another country who did not have proper papers yet. Carlos looked at Zara's unusual appearance and nodded slowly. "We get all kinds of people looking for a fresh start out here," he said. "As long as you're not causing trouble, you're welcome in Pine Ridge." Zara was amazed that he did not ask more questions or demand to see identification. In the Valdrian Empire, everyone was constantly monitored and controlled. The idea that someone could simply be accepted on trust was incredible to her. That same week, disaster struck the town. An old mine shaft collapsed with 3 workers trapped inside. The rescue would be dangerous, and there was no guarantee the trapped men were even still alive. Zara watched as Carlos organized the rescue effort without hesitation. "Those men have families," Carlos explained to his deputies. "We don't leave people behind." For 18 hours, Carlos and his team worked to dig through tons of rock and debris. They risked their own lives crawling through unstable tunnels. Carlos himself led the final push to reach the trapped workers, even though everyone told him it was too dangerous. When they finally pulled all 3 men out alive, the whole town celebrated. Carlos collapsed from exhaustion, but he was smiling. Zara realized she was witnessing something her people would never understand. These humans were willing to risk everything for others, even when there was no logical reason to do so. The third person Jake introduced her to was Beth Taylor, who owned the general store in Pine Ridge. Beth was a cheerful woman in her 50s who seemed to know everyone in town. She welcomed Zara warmly and immediately began treating her like family. "Any friend of Jake's is a friend of mine," Beth said, patting Zara's arm. "You just let me know if you need anything, honey." A few weeks later, the Henderson family's house burned down in the middle of the night. They lost everything they owned, including their savings and important papers. Zara expected the family to be abandoned to rebuild on their own, as would happen in Valdrian society. Instead, she watched in amazement as Beth organized the entire town to help. Within hours, people were donating clothes, furniture, food, and money. Volunteers showed up with tools and building materials. In less than a week, the Hendersons had a new house and enough supplies to start over. But why do they help? Zara asked Jake as they watched neighbors working together to raise the walls of the new house. What do they gain from this? Jake smiled as he handed a hammer to one of the volunteers. They gain the knowledge that they did the right thing. Sometimes that's enough. Zara shook her head in wonder. In her society, people only helped others if they received something in return. The idea of helping simply because it was good was completely alien to the Valdrians. As the months passed, Zara began to share more information about her people with Jake. She told him about Valdrian technology, their military ships, and their plans for Earth. Jake listened carefully, asking smart questions and taking notes. "They have weapons that can destroy entire cities," Zara explained one evening. "Their ships are protected by shields that can stop any of your missiles. They have soldiers who are genetically enhanced to be stronger and faster than humans." "But they've never fought humans before," Jake pointed out. "They don't know how we think or how we fight." Zara nodded. "That is true. They expect you to surrender when you see their power. They do not understand that humans fight harder when things seem hopeless." Jake smiled grimly. "Then they're in for a surprise." During the summer, Zara accompanied Jake, Lisa, Carlos, and Beth on various trips around the region. She saw human communities working together to build schools and hospitals. She watched volunteers risk their lives to fight forest fires. She met teachers who spent their own money to buy supplies for students, and doctors who treated patients, even when they could not pay. Every experience reinforced the same lesson. Humans possessed something the Valdrians had lost long ago in their pursuit of perfection and power. They had compassion. They had the ability to sacrifice for others. They had hope even in the darkest times. One day, while helping Beth organize supplies for flood victims in a neighboring county, Zara finally understood what she had been trying to tell the High Council. The humans were not weak because they cared about each other. They were strong because of it. "Jake," she said that evening as they sat on his porch watching the sunset, "I think I know how to defeat my people." Jake looked at her with interest. "How?" "We do not try to match their technology or fight their ships directly. Instead, we use what they cannot understand. We use the things they think make you weak." "Which are?" Zara smiled, and for the first time since her exile, she felt truly hopeful. "Your willingness to help strangers, your refusal to give up when things look impossible, your ability to work together even when you disagree about other things. They will not know how to fight an enemy that becomes stronger when threatened instead of weaker. Jake nodded slowly. It might work, but we'll need help. We can't fight an interstellar empire with just the four of us. Then we must find others, Zara said. Others who believe that what makes humans special is worth defending. As autumn approached, Zara had transformed from a broken exile into someone with a new purpose. She had been sent to Earth as punishment, but she had found something more valuable than anything she had lost. She had found a cause worth fighting for and people worth protecting. The Valdrian fleet was still months away, but Zara was no longer afraid. She had learned that the greatest weapon was not technology or force. It was the unbreakable spirit of people who refused to abandon each other, no matter how dark things became. In the small town of Pine Ridge, surrounded by humans who had shown her more kindness than her own people ever had, Zara began planning the defense of Earth. She would use everything the Valdrians had taught her about conquest, but she would turn it against them using the one thing they could never understand. She would fight them with hope. The secret could not last forever. In late summer, a group of hikers from Colorado came through Pine Ridge and spotted Zara helping Beth load supplies into her truck. Word spread quickly through social media about the unusual woman with purple skin living in the Montana mountains. Within a week, government vehicles started arriving in Pine Ridge. Jake watched from his cabin window as black SUVs parked outside the local diner. Men and women in dark suits walked around town asking questions. It was only a matter of time before they found Zara. "We have to run," Zara said when Jake told her about the agents. "If your government captures me, they will want to study me like a laboratory animal." Jake shook his head. "Running will only make them more suspicious. Besides, where could we go that they wouldn't find us eventually?" Before Zara could answer, there was a knock at the cabin door. Jake opened it to find a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and intelligent eyes. She wore a simple business suit and carried a briefcase. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Agent Patricia Wells with the Department of Defense. I believe you have someone here I need to speak with." Jake looked at the woman carefully. She seemed calm and professional, not threatening. "And if I do? Then I hope she'll talk to me voluntarily because Earth needs her help." Jake stepped aside and let Agent Wells enter the cabin. Zara stood by the fireplace, ready to run if necessary. But Wells surprised her by sitting down in a chair and opening her briefcase calmly. "Ms. Zara," Wells said, "we know you're not from Earth. Our satellites detected your ship entering our atmosphere 8 months ago. We've been trying to locate you ever since, not to harm you, but to understand what your presence here means for our planet." Zara looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. Slowly, she sat down across from Agent Wells. "You are not afraid of me?" Zara asked. Wells smiled. "I'm a scientist by training before I became an agent. You represent the greatest discovery in human history. Fear seems like the wrong response." Over the next several hours, Zara told Agent Wells everything. She explained about the Valdrian Empire, their plans for Earth, and the invasion fleet that was coming. Wells listened without interruption, taking careful notes and asking thoughtful questions. When Zara finished, Wells was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "How long do we have?" "Less than 1 year now," Zara replied. "Maybe only months." Wells nodded grimly. "I need to make some phone calls." This information has to reach the highest levels of government immediately. Within days, Pine Ridge was swarming with military personnel and scientists, but instead of treating Zara like a prisoner, they treated her like a valuable consultant. She was given comfortable quarters and access to advanced computers where she could input detailed information about Valdrian technology and tactics. General Robert Hayes, a veteran of 3 wars, flew in from Washington to personally oversee the situation. He was a tough man with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. Zara expected him to be hostile, but he surprised her. "Miss Zara," General Hayes said during their first meeting, "I want you to know that America has always been a nation of immigrants. People have come here from all over the world seeking freedom and opportunity. As far as I'm concerned, you're just the first immigrant from another planet." The information Zara provided was both terrifying and invaluable. The Valdrian fleet consisted of over 200 ships, each capable of destroying a major city. Their soldiers were genetically enhanced super warriors. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of anything humans possessed. "Conventional warfare is impossible," General Hayes admitted after reviewing Zara's data. "We can't build ships to match theirs in the time we have. We can't create weapons powerful enough to penetrate their shields. By every logical measure, we should surrender now and hope for mercy." "But you will not surrender," Zara said. It was not a question. General Hayes smiled grimly. "Ma'am, humans have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. We may be outgunned, but we're not beaten." Zara spent weeks working with military strategists, sharing everything she knew about Valdrian weaknesses. The enemy's greatest strength was their rigid organization and predictable tactics. They had conquered dozens of worlds using the same approach every time: arrive in force, demand surrender, destroy resistance with overwhelming firepower. "They have never faced an enemy that refuses to play by their rules," Zara explained to a room full of generals and admirals. "Every species they conquered either surrendered immediately or fought conventional battles they could never win. They do not know how to handle guerrilla warfare or psychological tactics." Jake, who had been invited to participate as Zara's closest human contact, raised his hand. "What about their soldiers? You said they're genetically enhanced." "Yes, they are stronger and faster than humans," Zara replied. "But they are also overconfident. They expect easy victories. They have never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything to protect their home." Dr. Amanda Foster, a military psychologist, leaned forward. "You're suggesting we use their assumptions against them?" Zara nodded. "Exactly. They expect humans to be selfish and cowardly. They think you will abandon each other when things become dangerous. This is their greatest weakness, because it means they will not prepare for the reality of human courage." Over the following months, an incredible transformation took place. Information about the coming invasion was gradually released to world leaders, then to the public. Instead of panic, humanity responded with determination. Countries that had been enemies began sharing resources and intelligence. Old grudges were set aside in the face of a common threat. Zara watched in amazement as humans across the globe began working together like never before. Scientists shared research freely. Military forces trained together. Ordinary citizens volunteered for dangerous missions. It was everything she had tried to tell the High Council about human nature. But even she was surprised by the scale of their response. "Your people are remarkable," Agent Wells said one day as they watched news reports of international cooperation. 3 months ago, half these countries wouldn't speak to each other. Now they're acting like one unified force. This is what the Valdrians do not understand, Zara replied. Humans become stronger when threatened, not weaker. They work together when it matters most. The plan that emerged was unlike anything in military history. Instead of trying to fight the Valdrians in space, Earth's forces would allow them to land. Then they would use humanity's greatest advantages, knowledge of their own planet, willingness to fight unconventionally, and refusal to give up even when defeat seemed certain. Hidden bases were built in mountains and forests around the world. Civilian populations were trained in resistance tactics. Communication networks were established that could function even if major cities were destroyed. Every human on Earth became part of the defense plan. Zara provided crucial intelligence about Valdrian command structures and communication systems. She helped design tactics that would confuse and frustrate an enemy used to quick, clean victories. Most importantly, she gave humanity something it desperately needed: hope. The Valdrians believe they are superior because they have better technology, Zara told a gathering of world leaders. But they have forgotten something important. Technology is just a tool. What matters is the spirit of those who use it. In that, humans are the most advanced species in the galaxy. As the months passed and the invasion fleet drew closer, Zara found herself changing in ways she had never expected. She was no longer the exile who had been cast out by her people. She had become Earth's greatest defender, using everything she had learned from both cultures to give humanity a fighting chance. When the Valdrian ships finally appeared in Earth's sky, Zara stood with General Hayes in the command center, watching the displays with calm determination. The ships were as massive and intimidating as she had warned, but she was no longer afraid. "Are you ready for this?" General Hayes asked her. Zara smiled, thinking of Jake's kindness, Lisa's compassion, Carlos's courage, and Beth's generosity. She thought of all the humans who had shown her that strength came not from conquest, but from protecting others. "I have been ready since the day I learned what it truly means to be part of something greater than yourself," she replied. The invasion was about to begin, but Earth would not face it alone. Humanity had found an unlikely ally in the alien girl, who had been banished to their world as punishment. Now, together, they would show the galaxy what real strength looked like. The Valdrian fleet arrived on a clear morning in December, 18 months after Zara had crashed in the Montana wilderness. 200 massive ships descended from space like dark clouds blocking out the sun. Each vessel was the size of a city, bristling with weapons that could level mountains. In the command center buried deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Zara watched the displays with General Hayes and the international team of military leaders. The sight of her people's ships brought back memories of her old life, but she felt no longing for it. Her home was here now, with the humans who had shown her what true civilization looked like. "Phase 1 begins now," General Hayes announced into his communicator. Around the world, similar command centers received the message. Humanity's greatest gamble was about to begin. The lead Valdrian ship broadcast a message in perfect English to every television and radio station on Earth. The voice was cold and mechanical, exactly what Zara had expected. "People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Valdrian Empire. Surrender immediately, and you will be allowed to live as workers in our service. Resist, and your cities will be destroyed. You have one of your hours to comply." What happened next would have amazed any Valdrian watching. Instead of panic and surrender, humans around the world responded with defiance. Protests formed in major cities with people carrying signs that read, "Earth will never surrender," and "United we stand." leaders from every nation appeared on television to reject the ultimatum. In the Valdrian flagship, Admiral Kalos Venthmore stared at the displays showing human reactions with confusion. He was Zara's older brother, though he had disowned her after her exile. Like all Valdrians, he expected inferior species to submit immediately when faced with superior force. "How are they reacting to our ultimatum?" he asked his communication officer. "Sir, they are refusing to surrender. Their leaders are calling for resistance. Their military forces are mobilizing." Admiral Kalos frowned. This had never happened before. Every other species had either surrendered immediately or made the mistake of attacking the fleet directly, where Valdrian superior firepower could destroy them easily. "Begin bombardment of their major population centers," he ordered. "They will surrender once they see our power." But as the Valdrian ships moved to attack Earth's cities, they found them mysteriously empty. Satellites showed massive population movements as millions of people evacuated to prepared shelters in remote areas. Instead of cowering targets, the Valdrians found abandoned buildings. "Sir, the population centers are empty," reported the tactical officer. "Our intelligence indicates the humans evacuated their cities days ago." Admiral Kalos was puzzled but not worried. "Then we will land our forces and hunt them down. Deploy the ground assault teams." Thousands of Valdrian soldiers descended in smaller ships toward Earth's surface. They were genetically enhanced warriors, stronger and faster than any human. Their armor was impenetrable to human weapons, and their energy rifles could cut through steel. Victory should have been quick and easy. Instead, they walked into the most confusing war any Valdrian had ever experienced. The human forces did not meet them in open battle. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, striking from hidden positions, and disappearing before the Valdrians could respond. They destroyed bridges and blocked mountain passes, forcing the invaders to move slowly through difficult terrain. They used local knowledge to set traps in places no off-world force could predict. Most disturbing to the Valdrians was the humans' complete refusal to surrender even when surrounded. Small groups of human soldiers would fight to the last person, rather than give up. Civilians risked their lives to hide resistance fighters and provide supplies. Even captured humans would not reveal information about their forces. "This makes no logical sense," Admiral Kalos complained to his staff after a week of frustrating battles. "These creatures are weak individually. Why do they not surrender when clearly defeated?" His answer came from an unexpected source. A transmission reached the flagship on a frequency only Valdrians used. The voice speaking was familiar, though Admiral Kalos had not heard it for 2 years. "Hello, brother. I see you are having some difficulty with your invasion." Admiral Kalos's face darkened with rage. "Zara, I should have known the human resistance was too clever to be their own work. You are helping them." "I am," Zara replied calmly from the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center. "And I am going to offer you something the High Council never gave me. A chance to surrender with honor." "You dare speak of honor after betraying your own species?" "I learned what honor really means from the humans you are trying to destroy. It means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It means standing up for what is right even when it costs you everything. It means never abandoning your friends." Admiral Kalos was about to cut the transmission when Zara continued speaking. "Look at your casualty reports, Kalos. Look at how long this is taking. The Council expected you to conquer Earth in days. How will you explain to them that you are losing to primitive humans?" The words hit their target. Admiral Kalos had been wondering the same thing. Valdrian casualties were mounting, and they had not secured a single major objective. Worse, reports from other Valdrian ships showed similar problems. The humans were fighting with a coordination and determination that defied all predictions. "What do you propose?" he asked reluctantly. "Meet with me face to face. Let me show you what I learned during my exile. See for yourself why these humans are not the enemy we were taught to believe they are." Against his better judgment, Admiral Kalos agreed to a meeting. He came to Earth with a small guard unit, landing at the coordinates Zara provided. She met him alone on a hilltop overlooking the town of Pine Ridge, now evacuated but undamaged by the fighting. Kalos had not seen his sister since her trial before the High Council. She looked different now. The cold perfection of Valdrian nobility was gone, replaced by something warmer and more alive. She seemed more real than he remembered. "You look well for someone living among barbarians," he said stiffly. Zara smiled. "They are not barbarians, Kalos. That is what I tried to tell the council, and what I want to show you now." She led him down into the town, pointing out the simple but well-built homes, the school where children learned together regardless of their background, the medical clinic where Lisa had worked to help anyone who needed care. She showed him the community center where neighbors gathered to solve problems together. "This is what your primitive humans created," Zara said. "Not through force or conquest, but through cooperation and mutual respect." Admiral Kalos studied the town with growing confusion. Nothing here matched what he had been taught about human nature. The buildings showed care and planning. The layout suggested a community that worked together for common goals. "But they fight among themselves constantly," he protested. "Our intelligence reports show endless wars and conflicts." "Yes, they do fight sometimes," Zara admitted. "But watch what happens when they face a common threat." She showed him recorded footage of the past weeks. Humans from different nations working together seamlessly, former enemies sharing resources and intelligence, ordinary people risking their lives to help strangers. She showed him the global cooperation that had emerged to face the Valdrian invasion. "They become stronger when threatened, not weaker," Zara explained. "They unite when it matters most. This is what makes them so dangerous to an empire built on the idea that might makes right." Admiral Kalos was quiet for a long time, processing what he had seen. Finally, he said, "Even if what you say is true, I have my orders. The Council expects me to conquer this world." "Then you will fail," Zara said simply. "And the Council will blame you for the failure. You will be disgraced, possibly exiled yourself. Is that what you want?" "What choice do I have?" Zara looked at her brother with compassion. "The same choice I made. You can decide that some things are more important than following orders. You can choose to do what is right instead of what is expected." Before Admiral Kalos could answer, alarms began sounding on his communicator. His flagship was under attack, but not from human forces. 3 Valdrian ships had turned against the fleet, their crews declaring that they would no longer participate in the conquest of Earth. "What is happening?" Admiral Kalos demanded. "Your own soldiers are learning the same lesson I did," Zara replied. "When they see how humans fight to protect each other, some of them remember what honor used to mean to our people." The rebellion spread quickly through the Valdrian fleet. Crews who had witnessed human courage began questioning their orders. Ships that had expected easy victory found themselves trapped in a war they could not win against an enemy they know. Longer understood, Admiral Kalos faced a choice that would define the rest of his life. He could continue the invasion and watch his fleet tear itself apart, or he could do something no Valdrian admiral had ever done before. Admit that conquest was not always right. Call off the attack, he ordered his remaining ships. All forces are to cease offensive operations immediately. The war ended as suddenly as it had begun. Admiral Kalos opened negotiations with human leaders, with Zara serving as translator and mediator. The talks were difficult, with neither side trusting the other, but slowly progress was made. The final agreement was unprecedented in galactic history.